Chris Voss gave me a huge 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon, and I'm grateful to him for bringing you today's video. I've been through a few different variants of Kefka, as there are multiple ways to build this commander, and in these videos I want to show off as many differing strategies as possible whilst also operating a somewhat functional deck. Kefka's ETB has everyone discard a card, and then count up the card types and draw that many. This suggests that you lean into a flicker strategy, and while that is viable, you'll still need to draw into a means of actually winning other than annoying your opponents into a concession. The discard will buy you time, but it won't automatically win you the game. So whilst we do have a little bit of flicker in the deck, it's not something that we're solely reliant on. What we really want to do is make use of our discard by putting a combo piece or two into the bin ready for reanimation. If we can pay the 8 and flip Kefka, then any pings on our turn that trigger off draw or discard will create a loop, meaning we draw until our opponent's life is gone, or our deck is. So it's not as simple as windmill slamming these pieces into play and going off, because you do have to consider the number of cards that you can draw. Obviously that's limited to the number of cards left in your library, but that's why I include Labman and Jace, so we could go infinite with no concern about decking ourselves at all. This is a degenerate bracket 4 Grixis control build, so we've got plenty of free counter spells to protect our board, along with rituals and rocks to accelerate the mana enough to flip Kefka. It's quite a simple deck in a way. It's just that there's some tricky little interactions here and there regarding the timing of when you go off depending on the pieces available. But if your opponents help you by depleting each other's life total a little bit, it means that you have to draw fewer cards in order to ping them out. Either that or you aim for multiple pings per one card drawn, maximising the efficiency of every draw you make. It is very mana intensive though when you need to find the 8 to flip Kefka, so that's why we've leaned into the reanimation to cheat some of the costs on the combo pieces. Anyway, it's a simple enough concept, but let's see if my P-Brain can handle the finer intricacies of said combos. So let's give this a whirl up against friend of the channel PJ from Commander Replay as well, so that's worthwhile pointing out. And yeah, let's just keep this. We've got Dark Ritual into Black Market Connections on turn 1 if we like, and we draw into a mana drain. Yeah, let's go for that turn 1 Black Market Connections. We can gain a decent amount of mana from that, and each of our other opponents just get down tap lands. We can play and crack a Wayfarer's Bauble if we decide on making a treasure here, which I'm going to make the decision to go for another card draw as well into Mana Vault. Now then, what do we do with that? Probably can't protect our commander, so I think we just play it cool for now and go for the Wayfarer's Bauble cracked. We're just going to play into our opponent's spot removal anyway. And there we see Cloud Midgar Mercenary, so that will enter and allow him to tutor up an equipment, and he's gone for Sword of the Animist, so he will be able to play that into the Garruk Teeg. And there is the Garruk Teeg being played as we assumed, so I think we should go for just a single life into a treasure token, and we can go for our commander, and if it eats spot removal then so be it. And we want to be setting up reanimation, so Visit Perun can go down here. And that ends up drawing us into a Deadly Relic, which we can't cast thanks to this being in play. And Cloud turns into the right against Garruk Teeg. See a Diamond Pickaxe triggering twice in order to make a couple of treasure tokens. Obviously gets the double triggers from the Cloud, and cracks those for Sword of the Animist. Manglehorn can blow up an artifact, and goes after the Sword of the Animist. Not too worried about equipments coming into play tapped. Although at rocks like Mana Vault it's going to affect. So I think we want to, maybe have a chump blocker if we're going to start looking at swinging in with Kefka. And then we see a Plain Art Incision, which we're likely going to play during the next turn cycle. Do we want Psychosis Crawler in play or not? I think double blue and Plain Art Incision is fine, so let's get down the tap land. Again, we discard to hand size here, so the other Niv Mizzet can go down. We'll just hope that our graveyard stays intact for if we eventually get to combo off. Sword of the Realms comes in tapped for the other equipment player. It can still be equipped though. So throwing that onto Denetha, a 4/2 Vigilance Trample lifelink, and that goes straight down the middle. Our opponents dealing damage to each other is good because we can't quite combo off yet, and the more damage they deal to each other, the fewer cards we have to have in our library to deal damage to all of them. Obviously our damage is based on card draw. Umezawa's Jitte, I'm going to allow him to play because I'm thinking it's going to kill off either Manglehorn or Garruk Teeg, and I'm fine with either going down, to be honest. That goes into the left this time. So a couple of treasure tokens, The treasure come into play tapped thanks to Manglehorn, which might be the thing that goes down to the Jitte. Switching back on our mana vault. Deciding to block with Denether. 4-2 versus a 3-2. So those two taking each other out is fine. Although the Denether will go back to hand thanks to the sword. And it's 2 charge counters going on the Jitte twice thanks to the cloud being equipped. So that actually has 4 charge counters on it now. And you can play with this at instant speed, so not necessarily any reason to do it yet. Might be that we could counter something to gain some mana with mana drain, although protecting our board with that might be a more intelligent idea. Kenrith's transformation is a good excuse to go for the planar incision so that this fizzles and never enters for the card draw. Might be that there's a swords or something after this as well. And yep, there it is, Path to Exile. So do we use our mana drain to protect our commander? I would like to resolve this, so I'm going to counter the path. Even though we only gain 1 additional mana from it, we get to draw into more cards and more protection potentially this way. So let's discard the Deadly Relic, seeing as how it is a dead card. Discarded was Kodama, Farewell is good to see the back of, Silk Guard, and we draw into the Terminate that we want to put on the Manglehorn. So we could get an untapped treasure token here if we take down Manglehorn straight away. We'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to transform Kefka. And we don't have protection held up for it anyway, so might as well go for this. Could draw into some free protection. Priority still being held up by the Naya player, so he could have a swords or a path himself. And that way the artifacts are going to enter untapped. There is some protection in Drown from the Lock, although we'd have to pay for it. We get 1 mana only from the mana drain. We're aiming to draw a lot of cards with Kefka, so just put 1 life into the black market. We're already down to 27. Play Mana Vault with the 1 mana. And I think we're fine to go for an island just in case we draw into an offer you can't refuse. Let's attempt to flip our commander. And each opponent does have to sacrifice a permanent here, so Galactique is going down, meaning that there's less chance that Jitte is going to do anything. So we saw the back of a treasure token as you would expect. Obviously Galactique and the sword went down as well. So now we have a 6-8 commander. And I think we're fine to go through to the Galactique player, who hopefully doesn't scoop in response because we do need the damage trigger here. We have to draw 6 cards. There is no choice in the matter once we've hit. And there is Lorien Revealed. We can cycle away. Essence Flux will untransform our Kefka, but it protects it at least. And we've drawn into Reanimation as well, so it might be that we can combo off soon. Denether back into play again. And replace the sword from the bin. Equips that to the same creature. Reforge the Soul. Each player discards their hand. I don't really like, but there's nothing we can do about it. We'll lose Essence Flux. Every chance we'll get into free counter magic though. I'm not going to give up on the flipped over Kefka just for the sake of the wheel. Yeah, we get into a worse hand. We still get into Reanimation at least. And our Boros friend over there did have to tap out pretty much. Plays Crystal Fragments, which is another equipment. Problem is now we have multiple creatures that we want to reanimate. Can we afford Rise of the Dark Realms? Because we are eager to get into the Labman so that we can actually combo. Yeah, if we manage to make a treasure next turn and drop a land, we'll be able to go Rise of the Dark Realms and get the combo going. And Esper Sentinel. And hopefully Galactique is tapping out. Oh, of course, that means that we can't go Rise of the Dark Realms, doesn't it? Okay, so in that case we are set back for another turn. Say no to the vault and take a ping. We get into a replacement for the Labman there at least. Let's draw another card, make a treasure as well. And there we see Drowned Catacomb. I think we're fine to just throw that in. We gain mana from Jeska's Will here, so I'll point that over to the left at the player with 7 cards in hand. Not going to bother paying the tax. And exiled there is more lands and a talisman. So let's see. We'll have 5 mana left after we get rid of Galactique. So we'll still be able to go for Rise of the Dark Realms. Yeah, I think that's fine. So cast this with the commander in play is destroy an artifact and 5 damage to a creature. We destroy the Jitte and 5 damage to Galactique. And that is a flawless maneuver. So that will keep Galactique in play. That's unfortunate. I think I just want him out of play regardless of what happens here. So I'm going to go after it before that resolves. This is the beauty of having a control deck where you can get into plenty of interaction for your opponents. -1/-1 on the token is fine. Might as well make use of the abilities here before it is blown up. And then -1/-1 on our commander a couple of times by the looks of it so that we draw fewer cards. We've got 58 cards left in the library, so we certainly can't take... Well, we could take 1 player out, but we'd have to stop the combo halfway through. 1 mana shy now of the Rise of the Dark Realms. But I suppose we could reanimate Shalai, and we can do that afterwards. So let's go for the Feast of Sanity. And we'll swing in with our now 4 power commander. Take that into the right again. Now we get into our free counter magic to protect our commander, which is good. There's a Sun Titan in the bin, which I didn't notice. That could reanimate our lab man. Maybe draw some spot removal. I think going after Shalai is a more intelligent idea. Just give our commander hexproof. And we lose 4 life to that. Again, hoping that the Gaddock T player doesn't scoop and take his Shalai with him. Our opponent's hands have just been refilled, don't forget, so there might be multiple board wipes that we have to go up against. If that is the case though, argument to be made for us throwing Kefka in the bin and trying to reanimate it regardless with Rise of the Dark Realms next turn. Cloud X Soldier coming into play for the first time. Does decide to throw the equipment on there, so that is now a 6/4 haste with Vigilance. Denitha swings down the middle. We get the Cloud. I think we just have to take the damage here, unfortunately. Might be that there's more haste to deal with from Eivor. Could be that on our previous turn, instead of reanimating the Shalai, I should have held on to reanimate for either Sun Titan or the Labman. And then we swing in with this next turn, discard into the Feast of Sanity and go off with that. Seeing as how we had Fierce Guardianship available to us, I'm just thinking that our opponents have lots of cards in hand and might be able to do something about us, but in hindsight it's not looking like it. So maybe we're just using Shalai as a blocker. This is the argument for reanimating Sun Titan last turn as well. It's a 6/6 body. I was playing around spot removal. So he controls 2 equipment, that is 2 damage to each opponent, and kind of forcing us to block here unless we feel as though we can get the win next turn. Might be that Gaddock T comes down and keeps us off Rise of the Dark Realms. Maybe if we block with Shalai here we can encourage some spot removal from Gaddock T. Savine's Reclamation, trying to bring back the Kodama of the West Tree. I mean, I think we just have to allow that. And then gets to return Kenrith's Transformation as well. So that's the one that we counter, because it's going to remove all the abilities from our commander, otherwise they will get to draw, but they're tapped out. And this guy has the path. So that's probably us done. We can't even reanimate the commander. We can reanimate everything else though. So we'll take the mana while it's available. The 1 damage comes in at us, so our opponents, I think, managed to save themselves there. And the wheel did make a difference, refilling their hands. Thrown Dynamo we can play whilst Gaddock Teague is not in play. We go down to 9 to the Mana Vault, so that puts us on a clock. As does the Black Market Connections, so we'll just lose the 1 life, go down to 8. So we could get down Thran Dynamo here. I'll drop the Urborg to make these fetches tap for mana. And we've still got a treasure available to us for an offer you can't refuse or something like that. Alright, so a bunch of stuff enters. Manglehorn blows up. Probably the Esper Sentinel. Argument to be made for this sword as well. We'll go after the Sentinel with that. Sun Titan we have to trigger on the stack, so the Surveil isn't as relevant. Animate Dead doesn't matter because we've just reanimated everything, so let's just make it a mountain. Don't think we have any equipments in the deck. Maybe we've got Swiftfoot Boots or something like that. We've used a lot of our Flicker already, so I'll go for Greaves. And we'll lose life to this, so we're surveilling stuff into the graveyard no matter what. And then I think we definitely want to be protecting Niv-Mizzet Parun because that is going to refill our hand. I suppose we could swing in with Sun Titan to grab another land first. And we can draw a card with the Pure Steel Paladin. I didn't realise I'd gotten into that, otherwise I would have gone for the Swiftfoot Boots because we do have Metalcraft on this now. And so here we go. Each opponent loses a life when we draw. Damage with both the Niv-Mizzets as well. So I'm just going to target the player with the least amount of life. Equip onto Sun Titan. So I'll swing to the right with my Tunnel Vision. And didn't manage to surveil any creatures into the bin for the Animate Dead. So I'll just grab Sulphur Falls. And we're eagerly awaiting the board wipe at this point. Make sure to protect Niv-Mizzet Parun. I suppose we can tap down this Niv-Mizzet to draw. Yeah, that's probably going to be a good idea actually. And when we draw, it pings each other player. Let's go after the Denitha, because life totals don't seem to matter all that much at the moment. Okay, and now we go on to the Parun and pass. So they've got a chance at exiling the Labman before we manage to do anything. At least we've got haste in play, but it's not looking likely that we're going to win this one. We're going to need 7 plus 8 mana is 15 to play and flip our commander, which we can actually afford next turn, so maybe we'll be able to make it work. Noteworthy with this, we're only at 5 permanents in the bin unfortunately, because I haven't cracked all that many fetches. And we just reanimated all the creatures of course, so a little bit of a nombo there. Denitha again, and we'll just throw away the small cloud. Hopefully they can't go for double strike and trample in response. Doesn't look as though that's the case. Alright, and the Garek player decides to quit, taking his Raminat with him. So should have blocked with that apparently. A Wrench being played here, followed by a Shadow Spear. So wants to deal as much damage with the Eivor as possible. Might be able to deal 8 to us. In fact, he only has to deal 6 to us, because we'll take 1 from each of these. Unfortunately, we're up against players unusually in bracket 4, who aren't playing a lot of instants and sorceries. Expected to draw a lot more from this, but obviously we're up against equipment players here. And swings into the left in order to try and keep his commander in play. So we go down to 4 just for the attack. Chumps with the elves. And then Teferi's Protection, that's a card draw at least. Eivor only has 1 damage marker on it unfortunately. So I'll point the 2 damage at Denitha. I don't think that really matters, I think I have to be going after some life totals here. That Teferi's Protection may well be the difference between us winning and losing this one. We could at least try to gain some life. If our opponent allows us to combo off to gain enough, we'll have to... Well, it's not likely that he's going to stick it out because it'll just take forever on Magic Online, but we'll have to use our imagination that we'd gain 39 life by draining that guy out. So we can take 2 to the black market here. We'll lose 1 to the Mana Vault. This will take us down to 1 life. Unless we want to untap. No, I think we might want to get down Kefka. So we draw a card, take a damage to Mana Vault. Each, well, only one of our opponents loses life. The more damage dealt, like I said before, the fewer cards we have to draw into to get rid of him. Luckily we're dealing multiple damage per 1 card drawn here, but just getting into rocks doesn't help us. So I think we have to go down to 1, only losing 2 life. Just drawing into a land again. I'm going to keep hold of that just in case we need it to discard. So each player discards here. We'll put a permanent into the bin just to help the chance along with this thing. And there we go, we've discarded, so we'll gain a bit more life here. We drew a couple of cards, so each of our draw panes is going to trigger twice. Got a Cyclonic Rift available as well. We could always go for that during PJ's turn if we're worried about dragging the game out even further. In fact, in order to test the waters, we're not out of it. They can still spot remove the Labman, but in order to test the waters, I'm going to go Lightning Greaves onto the Kefka. Priority still being held up by the Naya player. That is allowed to resolve, so we need 8 mana exactly for the Badlands and transform Kefka. And this is where it makes the difference that this player has decided to stick it out because we've actually got someone to hit. As he's got a Teferi's Protection of his own. Go through to attacks, hit the guy who hasn't phased out, and we draw that many cards, which is 5. As long as we draw some cards, it doesn't really matter. So a bunch of triggers on the stack. Don't forget that PJ's life total can't change here, regardless of whether we can target him or not. Didn't get into any free counter magic in that though. No force of will, but we're going to draw more cards here as these resolve. So all of them on the stack, 1 damage, and these will trigger the Kefka in order to draw us a card again. And we do that for as long as he has life. And if we're doing it to all of our opponents, we eventually draw into an empty library because we've only got 37 cards left in the deck. This is where it's nice to have that free counter magic backup. We've had to burn it all in order to combat our opponents though. So that resolves, draws us into a Talisman, and 3 triggers on the stack. It's rinse and repeat. There we see a Force of Negation, that's excellent. Can't necessarily expect the Naya player to play this out because it's just 1 Kefka trigger at a time, and it won't affect us as much now that we've drawn into this. But you could just work out the damage in paper and draw X number of cards. Well, X would be the life total in this instance. Well, we've got him down to 6, and you can see the stack that's trying to resolve here with all these damage markers. We'd definitely be drawing into our deck and ending the game here if it wasn't for the for his protection. And just a couple of pings away from taking this guy out and seeing if PJ can wriggle out from this one. We're going to be able to discard a bunch of permanents at least into the bin, which means we're going to switch on our Starving Revenant, which might be relevant for its life gain. Alright, so now we don't have anyone to deal damage to, so we can choose any target. The only targets are our own stuff. So we'll just make these fizzle. And hopefully the game doesn't crash here, because I'm just going to have to auto-yield all these triggers for the sake of my opponent's sanity. Assuming he hasn't fallen asleep yet. Okay, amazingly that didn't crash. So we are now through to the Boros player phasing back in. Do have to discard a bunch first though. So really I should maximise the triggers here and gain as much life as possible to survive PJ's combat. But all it is get through to our next turn and rinse and repeat. And I'm not in that much of a rush to do all that again. I'm sure PJ doesn't want to sit through it either, so we'll just pile everything onto the Pure Steel Paladin here. Frankly, it's just faster. So during the upkeep, we tap to draw a card, and now we see the Starving Revenant is resolving. And the fifth piece of equipment is the Conqueror's Flail. That's very fitting. Obviously could have countered that here, but that's quite a fun way to end the game. So swings in with his 5 equipment, that is 5 damage to us, and down we go. So that's where it's relevant that I should have pointed all these individual pings at my creatures and kept them alive, but still gained the life. But yeah, I'm not all that worried about it. We definitely showed what we want to do with Kefka. It might be an idea to just not play it online because it takes an absolute age. I was playing for like half an hour on my own there. Obviously, if I wanted to waste even more time, then working out how many triggers to put on individual creatures would have been the thing to do, but I was just clicking on the same one over and over again to get the game over and done with. So yeah, happy with that and the way it turned out. Hopefully you all enjoyed this after I've edited all the dead air out of it. Massive thank you to my opponents for bothering to play that out, and big thank you to the patrons for their support of the channel as well. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.